guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today is February 1st. We are finally finished with that very long first month of the year, but it being really long was really helpful for my reading goals, and I ended up reading a lot this month, so I'm really excited to dive into that today and tell you guys about all the books that I read in the month of January 2024. But before we jump into that, I need to get better at doing intros because I put together a lot of info for you guys in the description box, but I forget to tell you in all my videos. So if you didn't know, down below in the description box, you will find links to all of my things, my Etsy store, my Instagram, my Goodreads, and also every book that I mention in my videos. I put the link down below, and if you do use those links to buy books, it does help me, and I get a little percentage from that order that you make. So that is really helpful if you guys check down below in the description box. It's also helpful for you if you want a specific version of a book. I will try to link that one if I can find it. So that's just a little thing that I need to remember to tell you guys about so that it's helpful to you. It's helpful to my channel as well. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe. And if you see anyone else that you know or on Facebook groups or whatever who want book reviews kind of in the genres that I do, please feel free to share my videos with them. That helps to kind of spread the word and get just more people to be able to see my channel. So thank you guys so much for your support, for those of you who consistently watch and who are just always here watching my videos and agreeing with my reviews, sometimes disagreeing. I really appreciate when you guys comment, when you tell me that you really liked a book that I read or that you didn't like a book that I read. That's the really fun part about doing this YouTube channel, is talking with you guys about books. So if you ever have any comments about the books that I'm reading, please leave it down below in the comment section. I always respond to comments and love talking with you guys about them. So without further ado, let's jump into the actual books that I read in January of 2024. I looked back over the last 2 years of reading that I have done on YouTube. It's been 2 years since I've been consistently posting at least monthly recaps, and I've been trying to post other videos as well. But in January of 2022, I almost read as many pages as I read this year, but not quite. And then a year ago, I did not read very much. So this is a really good month to start off the year. I feel really happy about it. So if you guys have not seen all of the videos that I've done in the past 2 years, I will link the playlist in the description box, and I think I can also put it in the cards up here so you guys can go look at some of the things I read in previous years. But this year, in January of 2024, I read 9 books, and that totaled up to be 2,977 pages, so almost 3,000 pages to start off the year. Surprisingly, most of those were audiobooks. I don't know, I didn't expect that at all. And I only read 3 print books, but they were good ones, so I'm excited to go through all of them. Oh, I'm sorry, I actually read 4 print ones. I just forgot about one of them. Okay, so the first book that I finished this year was actually one of my smaller goals. I still need to do a video about all of the goals I had this year, but one of my smaller goals this year is to read 12 different Christian fiction books, most of which I already have on my shelves. I've just been terrible at reading them. So the first one for January was The All-American by Susie Finkbeiner. So I read All Manner of Things last year, absolutely loved it. I read another one of her books which has stuck with me, but it wasn't my favorite. All Manner of Things was a superb book. I highly recommend you read it. But The All-American is about the 1950s, when everyone was kind of being accused of being a communist, and all Bertha wants, and she's like a 16-year-old girl, all she wants is just to play baseball with the Sweet Peas, which was a female baseball league at the time. And her father gets accused of being a communist, so you see her sister, and her parents have to move to go to somewhere where people don't really know who she is. And then she tries to chase her dreams of playing baseball. It's just, Susie Finkbeiner writes really sweet, slow books where you just appreciate the characters and their relationships with one another and the history of it. It's definitely a book. It made me laugh. It made me cry. Somehow she just takes these normal life stories and teaches you a little bit about the time period while really connecting you with that family. I really loved all the relationship between the various family members, and especially the quiet, reserved bachelor uncle who reminded me a lot like of Matthew Cuthbert. And there is death in this book, which is very sad. There's actually a couple of deaths, but they just really hit you, and it's really unexpected, but written just in such a beautiful way. and you just really, again, feel so much compassion for the family and very connected to the family. So if you like historical fiction, I gave this one 5 stars. I would highly recommend that you pick this one up. I'm sure that the audiobook is great too, but I'm very happy to have this beautiful book on my shelves. All right, and then the next book that I read was All That Really Matters by Nicole Deese. Okay, next time I start one of these light Christian fiction books, please tell me to stop, because I'm always so disappointed and they're never good. They're never worth my time. Oh, once in a while you find something good, but I know that I don't like this author, and yet for some reason I picked up another one of her books. But definitely I'm not going to read her things anymore, because it's really one of those just superficial books, hallmarky with a Christian label slapped over the top. Basically, you can sum this book up in girl lives a superficial life, meets this tan buff guy with golden heart. The girl falls in love. The girl realizes that there's more to life than just social media. And then you throw in a little bit of forgiveness and some hardships, and you get the typical Christian fiction story. So I did like the forgiveness in here. It was really cool to see brothers like forgiving each other for things that had happened a long time ago and they'd been estranged about. The foster kids were sweet to see, like, them growing up and being in this home that really helps them to get out into the world. And the brother relationships were cool. But there was so much content in here that I did not like. A couple things I noticed were the noticing of the cute buff guy that's in like every single Christian fiction book. Kissing before you even know if you like each other. So weird to me. I ranted about this so many times. But why, guys? Why do people in these books, they kiss each other and then they like can't talk for a week because they don't know what that means and whether it was an accident or whether they can actually be friends? Like, does kissing mean nothing to anyone? Seriously, it's so annoying. Also, a character, big plot point in the book, a character takes issue with a sponsor asking her to wear something that is against her morals, and she has to think through all of that. And also 2 teens are found to be sleeping together against the rules of the group home. So a lot of content in here. Would not recommend this book, even though I gave it 3 stars. Okay, then I finished Deadwake by Erik Larson, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I have enjoyed every Erik Larson that I have read. This one is about the sinking of the Lusitania, but Erik Larson does a great job of taking just the cultural context all around these historical events that happen and teaching you all about them. What's happening in America, what's happening in Germany, in England at the time. So I didn't feel like the details that he added were boring, at least in the audiobook. I don't know if I was like sitting down and reading the book what I would think, but I did not find it boring to listen to all these details. The 2 main takeaways I had from this book, it's been a little bit since I finished it, so I don't remember a ton. The 2 main things I remember is whenever they all fall into the water, he makes a point to talk about how the water was 55 degrees and how that doesn't seem that cold, but even a couple degrees drop in your core temperature is enough for you to die. So I thought that was really interesting and just kind of weird to think about when you go outside and it's 55 degrees, that if you sat out there for long enough, it actually would be cold enough to kill. And then another thing that I took away from this book is that books like this really could only be written because of the intense journaling and letter writing that people engaged in these previous generations. And I just think that's so amazing and also kind of sad for our culture, because we don't sit down and write what we're really thinking and what we're noticing in other people and just about our surroundings. That if someone tried to go back and write a book about us, you know, what would they really have to go off of besides maybe Instagram post or word of mouth if our friends were still alive, but we just don't write like they did. And I wish that we still did that, because I really enjoy writing. So if you're a history nerd like I am, I would highly recommend reading this book. And I just realized that I actually have another book that I read in print. So my count was way off. I still read 9 total books, but actually 5 of them were print books. And I need to go get this book because I actually already loaned it to my brother. So let me go fetch that. Okay, I'm back. So the next book I read was The Griffin Heist by James Hannibal. And I ended up giving this 4 stars. Pretty much everything I've read by James Hannibal has either been a 4-star or a 5-star book. He just writes actually clean books that I can recommend to my teenage brother and not feel bad about recommending it, and there's some kind of redemptive thing to it. My sister's looking at the camera and can see me. I really like his writing and the stories that he writes, and a lot of it comes from like personal experience, and he always adds some interesting bit of science or history to it, which I think is just so cool. So the story of this book is about a CIA officer who is assigned to the Eastern European division, but not to any of the main offices. She gets assigned to the department just known as Other and goes to this really obscure place in Eastern Europe. She gets assigned to this case that is based off of a tip that they got from like an informant they have there. And so she goes and talks to this young, charming Moldovan executive about his designs for defense technology. And then she works with her civilian partner, Adam Tyler, and she takes a deep dive into a world where criminal minds and unlikely strategies compete for access to the Griffin, a high-altitude data vault that hovers in the mesosphere. But is Tyler actually helping her, or is he using her for his own dark purposes? So you have this back and forth the whole time of, is Tyler a bad guy? Which side is he actually working for? They have to put together like this task force, which I just love that storyline in books where there's all these different personalities having to work together to complete this heist. So I really enjoyed just the relationships that the characters had together, and the camaraderie, the banter is really good. And there was a lot of action in here of like trying to figure out, you know, how are we gonna steal this? It was kind of like National Treasure kind of vibes. And as far as content, like there was at least one kiss, maybe a couple, another one, and there was a little bit of flirting between like Talia and the Moldovan guy, and then between Eddie and another girl. But I don't think beyond that there was really anything. But if you like this kind of CIA suspense books, I would highly recommend this. Alright, then I read Holding Hands, Holding Hearts by Richard D. Phillips and Sharon L. Phillips. I heard about this book a long time ago, but then when I went to the ACBC conference this year, they had it there, so I thought, why not buy it? I have read a lot of books on dating. I have a video on it that I will put up in the cards. A lot of the books that I've read and kind of ranking what they're good for. This one I think is one of the best books that I've read on dating. It's just very straightforward, very biblical, and they talk about marriage, they talk about manhood, womanhood, attraction, singleness, all these different things, and it's just very refreshing to read, where they're not like skirting around the bush, they don't have worldly ideas. It's very biblical and just really informative. So a lot of people shy away from saying that marriage should be the goal for a single, that man needs a woman, or that woman needs man, or that singleness is not a gift, but they talk about this a ton in here, and I think just present it in such a fabulous way. And they biblically explain, you know, the joy and the blessing of marriage, while also talking about the fact that singleness, while not a gift, you still should have joy and contentment in it, because if you're not content in singleness, you're not going to be content in dating or engagement or marriage or parenting or any of those things. So they do stress that. One of my favorite chapters in this book was the one on singleness, because I see so many, like every single account on Instagram that talks about being single is always talking about how singleness is a gift that we have and that we should embrace it, and that we shouldn't like really look forward to or expect marriage, but then they have a desire for marriage. And that's not a biblical understanding of what a spiritual gift is. So I really like how clear this book is, that the gift of singleness is a very rare thing, and it only applies to those select few who have no romantic inclinations at all. And then they go on to explain that while it is a trial, we have to persevere through it and have contentment and reliance on the Lord, just like any other trial in life. So I really love that chapter. This review that I wrote on Goodreads is one of the longest reviews I've ever written. So if you're interested in this book, I will link the review down below. But there were so many good quotes in here. It took me forever to type them all out, and I only typed out about half the ones that I highlighted in here. If you look through the pages, there are so many highlights and underlinings. So many. It was really good. But they have a chapter on how God's design in creation, like how we were designed to relate to one another, and then how the relationship falls in sin, how we can put on love and the relationship can be redeemed in Christ. Then specifically, what is the man's role? What is the woman's role? And then they talk about attraction. They talk about the first date, what you should look for in the first date, commit or not to commit. I really love that chapter. They were talking about, okay, should you get married? How do you know if that's the right one? And they stressed, I love how they said, go to God in prayer. Tell him why you want to commit to a certain man or woman, or why you are afraid to. Ask him to let you trust him first, and then based on faith, decide what to do. Then they have a chapter on from dating to marriage, and then the chapter on singleness. They say, to be sure, the Bible speaks of the gift of singleness, but if you are reading this book, and especially if you're still reading it, you obviously do not have this gift. And then They say perhaps your frustrations in waiting for love are intended to draw you nearer to God and to teach you reliance on His grace. So I would highly recommend this to any Christian, single or dating. I would probably say 16 or up, unless you were reading it with a parent. I think it would be a great book study to go through with a parent or an older, mature Christian. But it is such a useful book, and I think a great foundation for going into that dating relationship. Then I listened to Agatha Christie's last month. The first one was Murder at the Vicarage. This is number 2 of the Miss Marple series, and the first Miss Marple I've ever read. I believe someone on my channel recommended it to me, and I'm sorry if you really love this book, but I only gave it 2 stars, and it is not one of my favorite Christies. I really don't like Miss Marple, and I think that overall, I don't really like an elderly lady as a lead character. I just don't really relate to her at all, and she wasn't like a main part of the story. It was just other people figuring out the mystery. I didn't really like it. I did like some of the like psychology of like trying to figure out, okay, is it this person because you expect it to be this person, or can it not be that person because you don't, or you do expect it, so it clearly can't be that person. That was kind of fun, and it was back and forth of who you might expect it to be based on the clues. But I wasn't very engaged in the story, and then in the end I was kind of disappointed in the conclusion, so I would personally not recommend this Agatha Christie. And then the other one that I listened to was The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. This one I gave 4 stars, and definitely is one of my favorites. I believe that they just recently made a TV show or a movie about this. I need to go look at that. But I definitely did not see the ending coming on this, and I just love Poirot books because of the way that they take all the clues, lay them out. You think that maybe you can make a case, but then it's someone that you totally didn't expect, but is highly probable. This one was something that I would never have expected. I don't think that anyone who reads this book could have expected what the conclusion was, but maybe you did. I really loved this one, though. It was definitely a great Agatha Christie. Okay, and then our 2 family read-alouds that we finished this month were, first, The Summer of Suspense by C.R. Hedgecock. I believe that this is written by a teenage girl trying to write a Christian fiction book that actually had homeschoolers in here, and there actually was a lot of faith in there. While the faith part was really cool to see them like praying in tense situations and trusting the Lord, there was not much more about this book that I like. I'm really sorry that I had to give it 2 stars, and I'm kind of surprised that it does have such a high rating on Goodreads, because it is not something that I would recommend. I would not call it The Summer of Suspense because there's hardly any suspense in there. It had potential to be suspenseful, but I think in the way that she wrote it, she didn't capitalize on that. There's a lot of showing and not telling. Pages and pages of description. Sorry, telling and not showing. Lots of description and clunky dialogue, but not much actually happening in the story. The sentences didn't really flow that well. And yeah, I think it just needed a lot of editing. If you're desperate for a clean book that has good examples, maybe you could pick this up, but I would highly recommend like a Lamplighter or some Chuck Black or even Tolkien or Andrew Pearson or Christine Cohen, The Winter King. That's a great book. I think there's just so many other options for books that you could read to the, I think this was written for like the 8 to 12 age, that had good examples and good morals. I think you could find something else to read. Okay, then we also read this as a family. Obviously, we started it in December for Christmas, but it's really not a, Christmas book. It's just meditations on the Incarnation. So different meditations on the Incarnation from, I believe, Spurgeon's sermons and writings. There was just so many things that he points out in here that you just don't think about and that really impact you. I think there was a lot to take away for believers to make you more grateful and to think about the salvation that you have, but also for the unbeliever, there was a lot of evangelism in here and a lot of just talking about, do you think that you're too far gone, that Jesus has the power to save you? It was just really good, and I would definitely recommend doing this as maybe a read aloud to your family, or even reading it as part of your personal devotions. Really good book. And then the last one that I read in the month of January was You're Not Enough and That's Okay, Escaping the Toxic Culture of Self-Love by Allie Beth Stuckey. I frequently listen to Allie Beth Stuckey's podcast called Relatable and really enjoy her perspective on a lot of things. And I saw that this book was on my Libby app, and so I listened to it. It was only a 4-hour book. So I think it was a good short book on a huge problem that we have in our culture of this self-love and this selfishness. And she talks about how the answer is not to focus on yourself more, to wait for life until you really love yourself, but to focus on others more. She really confronts a multitude of problems that stem from this teaching of self-love. The fact that people are not getting married, that people are not having kids, that they're okay with, you know, transitioning your gender and all these different things. So I appreciated what she talked about, and there was a lot of biblical truth in here. However, it is too short of a book, I think, to deal with all of these huge problems. So I think maybe she shouldn't have tried to deal with all of them in here. But other than that, great book, and I really appreciated all the personal stories that she told and how she had experience with all of these different things that come from this toxic culture of self-love. So there are all the books that I read in the month of January. I actually had quite a few good books, quite a few good recommendations that I would give to you guys. I think my favorite book of this month was, for nonfiction, Holding Hands, Holding Hearts would definitely be my favorite, and my favorite fiction book of the month, I think, would be The All-American. So let me know down below in the comments what you read in January, what your favorite book was, and how is your year starting as far as reading? Are you doing well on reading, or are you going to kind of wait until later on in the year to knock a bunch of books out? So I hope you guys will come back and watch my video next week, and please subscribe if you like my videos. Thank you.